Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, everyone in the audience. We are now about to start harnessing the risks of cloud computing using risk for growth and optimization. And for those of you on the streaming video, welcome, and those of you in the audience, welcome. And we want to make this as interactive as possible. We want to keep you all awake at this time of day. So we're really happy that you're all here, and treat this like a thought leadership study hall where we're all here to help each other understand the risks of cloud computing and how to create growth and optimization with them. So I'm going to introduce the panel in a minute. But at first, I thought I would just sort of recollect what's been in the news this year. We're going to roll back the clock to June of 2013, where we last spoke at Cloud Expo in New York at the Javits Center, and we talked about packing a suitcase to the cloud. Well, with everything going on in security and data, big data, and all of the incidents that have gone on there, Superstorm Sandy has happened, and we've had so many issues that now we're going to take a dump truck or a moving van to the cloud and move everything there where it's secure and safe, and where you can know you're going to have expertise. And our panel of experts today are going to tell you why the cloud is where you can get real growth and optimization. So we have some very interesting facts and figures, and we have some great speakers. So I'm going to start by just keeping you with a few thoughts that there's a shift happening in the P&L in your corporation and in the government as an entity, and globally, that we're all looking at sharing our P&L differently for IT, and that will help us lead to some of this growth and optimization of our risks in the cloud. So that's going to be a theme throughout our panel. So I just want you to think about that, and we're going to have a lot of discussion about that today, and also about the public-private partnership. The U.S. government is using Amazon AWS as a cloud provider, and so we've got the public side coming over to the private. So what does all that mean for us? So I thought we would just introduce the panel, and then they're going to say a few what's keeping them up at night type thing, and what's on the top of their minds and the top of their agendas as they've traveled the world globally to talk about cloud and be sort of cloud evangelists for their companies. And then we would like to have your questions. If you have any questions, Jeremy said he'll run around with a mic and opportunistically get questions from you as well, and we have some questions. So I'm going to start with Fran Smolson. Fran is the Associate General Counsel at Logitech, and she has spent many years representing tech companies for over 30 years on licensing, advertising, trademark, and copyright, as well as business development and privacy. At Logitech, she manages the legal work for global marketing along with music and the gaming divisions, which I think are pretty interesting. We want to hear about that, Fran. And she also wears the worldwide privacy and compliance hat. So I bet she has a lot of stories to tell. Prior to Logitech, she worked at Intuit and Oracle, and she earned her JD and her master's in foreign services from Georgetown University and her AB from UC Berkeley. Thank you, Fran, for joining us. Welcome. Lynn Comp is the Director of Data Centers at Intel. She brings a diversity of experience across multiple cloud touch points spanning software, networking, and communications, cellular telephony, and technology supporting cutting-edge ways to operate a cloud data center. As a result, Lynn brings a unique systematic perspective to the emerging challenges in the cloud around new efficiency and how data is transformed, transported, and stored. Currently, Lynn manages a team responsible for enabling and marketing platform capabilities that simplify managing a cloud and data center for energy efficiency, compliance, audit, and serviceability. Thank you, Lynn, for being with us. And then Julia Telriga, she's at Cisco. She is currently the VP of Global Cloud Practice for Cisco's Consulting Services, the company's business and IT technology consulting arm. In this role, Manjulia and her team are driving Cisco's enterprise and and service provider cloud strategy, leveraging Cisco's Internet of Everything, IoT, which we'll be hearing more about today, I think. The platform to help CIOs transition IT as a service delivery models and supporting service providers in developing cloud market entry and execution strategies. Manjulia is a 25-year IT veteran, and we welcome her today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Francois Gilbert, she's with IT Law. She assists high-profile clients on complex global compliance efforts, the global collection for use, sharing, and cross-border transfer of data, social media issues, cloud computing deals. She is the author of General Privacy and Security Law, which explains and analyzes in depth the data protection laws of 66 countries, wow, for all the continents and we welcome you today. Thank you, Francois. And I know she's been very busy because she just finished writing another book. So, well, we welcome the panel, and now I'm going to ask the panel to give you sort of what's keeping them up at night and what's on the top of their mind, and then we'll go into some questions. Thank you. So, Fran, you want to start?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Nice to be here today. So, as you can probably tell, I'm from Logitech, and we are on the buyer side of most of these services. So the things that keep me up at night as an attorney for the company is to look at it from two perspectives. A lot of our systems right now that run Logitech, both our internal systems for employees or for mail and all sorts of different kinds of services, we're purchasing those, as well as to run some of the services that we provide to end users. And so the things that are keeping me up at night is trying to, for instance, negotiate these deals. We're a worldwide company which has operations globally, and we're trying to comply with a lot of laws throughout the world, and particularly the European Union as a Swiss company. And so we are looking at a lot of these companies and just worrying about the security, worrying about the compliance efforts that these companies are providing, worrying about are they really standing behind those services? I'll talk a little bit later about trying to negotiate these deals and trying to have the proper indemnities in case something does go wrong. We're looking out in the marketplace and we're seeing companies going bankrupt. There's been a recent high-profile bankruptcy. So looking at, even if we have compliance of a company, we do the security reviews, et cetera, in the front end of the business deal, how are we going to continue to monitor those companies to make sure they continue to be credit worthy, that they're not going to go bankrupt and then you worry about your data later. So there's a lot of different kinds of legal and compliance issues that I think are still evolving in this area, and those are the kinds of things that we're trying to stay on top of.
Thank you, Fran. Lynn, would you like to?
Sure. So as a silicon supplier, and we end up in many of these systems worldwide, we hear a lot of different stories about the concerns that people have in terms of securing their data center. And at the beginning of the year, it was really interesting because there was a lot of discussion about compliance, especially when you're running in a virtual environment. It's very difficult to know exactly where your workloads were running. It's very difficult to have an audit record, and it's a real pain to prove that things weren't moving where they shouldn't. And so there was a lot of discussion around compliance and being able to audit these very fluid workloads that were moving around and the data that was migrating, especially when you're dealing with multi-tenancy. And even if you're a multinational and you're one company, you're still probably dealing with multi-tenancy on two fronts. One is any IT person will tell you that they run multi-tenant even though they don't have other companies in their data center, because HR has their own systems and manufacturing has their own systems, and you end up with all of these little separate worlds that are multi-tenant. But then as a multinational, you have to be really careful about data governance. And then over the last year, as we've come through some interesting discussions about data tracking, there's been more sensitivity towards geolocation and being able to tag workloads so that they don't even go to servers or to racks where they shouldn't be because of regulation or compliance or any of those sovereignty issues that are becoming more and more an issue for companies as they're just doing business within a private cloud, much less public cloud.
Thank you. And Julia?
So as we at Cisco are working with cloud providers as well as enterprise customers and actually even SMBs, it's becoming very interesting to watch the dynamics from a demand and a supply side, especially in reference to security and compliance, to the point that Lynn brought up in terms of how do the providers and the enterprise customers drive this. So when we are working with the providers, what is their value proposition? Because there are so many cloud providers providing infrastructure as a service, and what's the innovation they need to be providing, either with SaaS applications, or it could become security and compliance, because that's top of mind of the customer. On the enterprise side, we are seeing more and more that the role of IT as the budget as well as decision making is moving to the lines of business as they're buying cloud services from outside, as in public or virtual private cloud services. What is the role of IT? And IT is becoming more as a broker. And what will be their innovation in reference to security and compliance as well, versus the other portfolio that they've provided traditionally. And I'll talk more about it based on a study that Intel and Cisco has done and what the respondents from all over the world have stated, but I'll leave that to later when we are having that discussion.
Great. Thank you. Francois?
For me, as an attorney, I get to know both worlds, and sometimes I represent the buyers, and sometimes I represent the purchasers. And then I have another role. I'm the General Counsel of the Cloud Security Alliance. And in that capacity, we try to help both sides and provide guidance to companies and help them think about what are the potential risks, what are the potential pluses and the minuses of going in the cloud. So I have a very broad perspective, and I sympathize a lot with Fran, because when I think about the cloud as a purchaser, I think about this big house of cards where you have for one product you have so many cards needed to build it as part of the cloud. You have maybe the service provider, then you have maybe the Facebook Connect, and then you have a relationship with something else, and then the emails go to Google. And to build this huge fascinating product that we as users love to use, you see that you have all of these components, and then I say, oh my God, if there is one that does not work, if there is one that is not secure, if there is one that doesn't have good ethics, if there is one that sells the information it has, it is going to affect everybody. And so that keeps me awake at night, because more than anything, I think what the cloud has brought is the use of the cooperation of many different companies, many different components to create one single offering.
Thank you, Francois. So that was very interesting. And Francois was talking about the supply chain of cloud and IT, and Julia talked about the recent Cisco Intel study that on the impact of the cloud on IT consumption models. So I thought she might want to talk a little bit more about that and give us a framework of what that is, and if IT is becoming like a broker, what does that do to the supply chain? So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about the study.
Sure. So earlier this year, Cisco and Intel pulled together a partnership, and we interviewed about over 4,000 IT leaders around the world. This included the Western world, like the United States, UK, Germany, and other Western European countries, as well as emerging the BRICM countries, the Brazil, Russia's, India's, China's, and the Mexico, so that we have a good perspective on both sides. What was very interesting is we have a whole bunch of data in terms of how IT sees itself, because there is a whole fear in terms of, is IT going to become irrelevant? None of them said that. They said we'll be front and center. Now, the reason why they thought of themselves front and center, the Western world said, because they've got the pressure of cost reduction, they're going to drive it from a cloud perspective. The ones in the emerging markets said it gives us an opportunity to move much faster. But the key point that I wanted to bring here, especially in reference to compliance and security and the role of IT, is 76% of the respondents, and that's across across the board, emerging and Western world, is that IT will become a broker of cloud services and overall IT services to the business. So what does that mean? If they need to become a broker, then how do we drive innovation and how do they stay relevant, especially if so much of the budget is moving over to the lob? You're most welcome to read that study in more detail. I've been blogging about it, tweeting about it, and also you can go to cisco.com to look at it. But the key point is, how is that framework on the role of IT, both in terms of getting public cloud, private cloud, and delivering all those services to the lines of business?
I think it's very depressing. I really think it's very depressing. I mean, I'm married to a techie. I live and breathe technology. We have all the technical toys possible at home. And I know how valuable the techie is to my life, to my law firm, and to the company. And I think these people are wrong. They are the key to the operation of the company. They know how the company works. They know what it needs. They have the education to watch out for the company. And if they really think that they are just the gatekeeper, it's sad, because they are tremendously important to companies. I mean, I've done outsourcing. Cloud is a form of outsourcing. It is not outsourcing, it's a form of outsourcing. I've done outsourcing now for 25 years. And in every single outsourcing situation that I've seen failed, it's because the company failed to keep its insiders, failed to respect them, failed to ask for their input. So please, the techies, don't think that you are the brokers. You are essential to the life of your companies.
So one thing that I would add is, I agree with both of you. I think that this is just another phase of a different kind of outsourcing. And then the whole idea of the line of business creating the shadow IT and going outside. I mean, how many times have we seen this? We've had rogue Wi-Fi base stations, we've had rogue smartphones, every wave of technology innovation that's been sneaking in or out the back door of enterprises. There's been a wave of innovation to help the IT guys become a value add and get in front and not get in the way, but help the line of business make the right decisions, make sure that, yes, you can code PHP, but you really should pay attention to the SQL problems with PHP, for example, and make sure nothing goes out of the back door. So I think it's really important for this whole industry to start innovating, to give our customers those tools that will help them become a value-added broker and just get ahead of this next version of the rogue Wi-Fi base stations and the rogue smartphones that they always came in first because somebody dragged them on the internet and inside intranet. This is just another version of that it's our job to help solve.
So what you're saying, Lynn, is that the role as an IT as a broker is actually an enabler for more innovation.
Absolutely.
Because it gives everyone a go-to point to take those shared services dollars. So does that mean that the P&L for IT is being shared in the company more, that people are awake to say, oh, we have to go to the IT broker and say, how do we utilize, instead of, like you said, sneaking in the back door with, you know, going and having a little cloud, you know, out at AWS where, you know, the company doesn't know about it. Is this more opening the kimono for innovation because the company is now saying, we have a platform inside for shared services?
That's definitely been the vision of a number of different IT departments that I've spoken with, including our own. Their whole purpose is getting to the point where they can become a platform as a service provider and be the easiest point to come up with the fastest time to market services that are also compliant and also reliable. That would be their end game. So all of the tools that give them the flexibility to both be a broker and a value-added collaborator with the businesses, but at the same time not get in the way. That has been the main objective of a lot of their deployments.
I would agree with that. I'm not sure broker is quite the right word for me. It's more of a partner in this in moving forward. It's looking at the innovation, looking at what the business needs, looking at costs certainly, but looking at that partnership as in a compliance sense, but also in an innovative sense. And so broker, to me, doesn't quite say their role. And I still think, to Francois' point, I don't think it's depressing. It's just it's an evolving role for IT.
So maybe broker's a dirty word. Maybe we need to write another study where we change the
I would call
advisory services or a partnership.
Yes.
I would suggest enabler. It's more positive.
Irrespective of what the word is, whether it is an enabler, it's a partner, IT has to redefine how they drive innovation. If you think about proprietary services that they provided in the past, and now it's standard services they have to provide, whether it's public cloud, private cloud, and the role of security, and the role of governance, agility, what's their role? And I think there's a sense of urgency in terms of the IT organization, in terms of what is that? So whether it's broker or it's something else, it's a partnership between the labs and the IT organizations to really drive the next generation of IT enablement. And the reason I bring this up is to the point that Mary Beth brought up earlier on the work that we are doing at Cisco on the Internet of Everything. And the Internet of Everything is a concept of, and you're hearing a lot in terms of the Internet of Things, because 99.4% of devices around the world are not connected to the Internet. And if we have an opportunity to connect those 99%, which is the ultrasound machines or the automotive industry or all the various devices, and cloud is the enabler of that. With huge amount of data that's being created. There's more data that's going to be created on the internet in 10 minutes by the end of this year than has been in the history of mankind till 2008. What's the role of cloud? How does security play a role in it? And what's the value of cloud as we are driving that? So IT has to get ahead of the curve in terms of getting ready for the Internet of Everything. And what's the role of security in reference to that? What's the role of overall enablement of the cloud services? So whether it's broker, whether it's something else, I think the role of security is becoming more and more crucial as the next wave is coming about.
So to create this security and transparency and get on the bandwagon of sort of the Internet of Everything, but being compliant with trusting your supply chain of your IT of everything, how do you do that? How do you get people to take the shift? So what will it will, we know it'll benefit the compliance and regulatory field, but how do you get people who, are holding on and being tribal to, what are the, how do you sell them on the benefits of getting on that bandwagon?
Well, I know, I'm not sure if it's selling you on the benefits, but the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, has been doing a series of papers and studies and recommendations that they've been releasing. A number of enterprises have taken it to heart and have even required suppliers bid that they have hardware root of trust. So you can verify and validate that no malware was put on your hardware before you install it. And they also have recommended geolocation to make sure that you always have your data and your data governance. So I think there's a series of standards that are coming out. I do believe that kind of vote with the wallet, the CIA and Amazon best node methods will probably become more and more recommended for just general clouds to make sure that when you go to the cloud, you're doing it in the most safe and secure manner.
So if we give a global example of how people might benefit, so we're all afraid to give up our data and take it outside the United States because we lose control potentially, and data in the cloud now that can be in a sovereign state, for example, because of recent incidents, as we all know here, example of the Snowden case. But how do we still comply with the sovereign states, and how does the cloud help us leverage that and be compliant, and also to actually build optimization on using the cloud to say that we're going to de-risk you from, we're not going to take your data into the United States, but we're going to let you keep the data there, but you're still going to use our software as a service or our enterprise applications. So can you give us examples of how that might work?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. This whole concept of sovereign clouds, I came across it a couple of years ago in actually Asia. But due to the Patriots Act in the United States, I start to understand that the people in Latin America don't want their data centers sitting in North America because they're afraid of their cloud. So people in Mexico don't want their data sitting here. And can a cloud service provider from the United States provide data, cloud services? Where does the data sit? So having experienced this in Asia, Indonesian government doesn't want Singapore, Singtel as an example, just as a random example, to provide cloud services with data sitting in Singapore. How do you deal with disaster recovery? Should you have, and especially island states in Southeast Asia, how do you move earthquake zone? How do you move disaster recovery as a cloud service sitting in Malaysia versus sitting in Singapore if there is the sovereignty of data and you don't want data to be moving around the countries? So we are seeing new and new business models come about where a company like Dimension Data, who created a partnership with Cisco, what they're doing is they're going into local service providers in Indonesia, in Hong Kong, in India, and doing a colo with their data center, but really driving the data there, but bringing the best of practice of cloud from a global perspective. Therefore, they have created partnership with BSNL in India, Indosat in Indonesia, Hutchison in Hong Kong, and building a distributed model without cloud actually driving the data outside of the respective countries. That's just one example, but you're seeing a lot of new business models coming about in terms of cloud providers to customers, and as IT organizations or as lines of business, you want to watch out for that as you go into what are the kind of cloud providers I want to be getting, where's the data sitting, which part of the world is it sitting at, is it sitting in my country?
Fran or Francois or Lynn, would you like to comment on that?
No, I mean, one of the issues that we've had for many years with the cloud has been, when I was on the buyer side, has been to have the cloud providers tell us where the data were located. So I welcome the opportunity to have finally my question answered. It has been very difficult. We've had asked them, where is the data, and it has been a wall for many years. Amazon has been one of the early companies opening up and would be willing to tell us where the data are located, be willing to allow the customer to pick a country or a region, and I think it's a very positive aspect of this. As a technologist, I hate it because then that's not my idea of the cloud, where you can balance your load and send it to a different region and take advantage of the day and night and so on. But from a data governance standpoint, I think it's a great initiative.
Fran, would you like to comment on any of the individual privacy or security issues?
Well, I agree with Francois. We're, in the past we really have had trouble finding out where the data is stored, and certainly from a compliance point of view, we need to know that information, and that has been a block for some of the deals where we've had to actually reject those companies where we can't get that information. And so I think these are positive developments, and certainly as we go forward, I think there's going to be much more flexibility for companies to accept moving certain of their services into the cloud.
So panel, talk about for us, so all of this sounds like the cloud is obviously the great equalizer in creating innovation, but how do you pick your partners, and how does the broker or the advisory services of IT help you pick your partners, and what kind of questions do you want to ask them as a vendor? How do you evaluate them? So.
So I can answer that a little bit. You know, our group, what we end up doing is really, again, the partnership with our IT organization and security is if our clients internally come to us and want to move one of their services to the cloud, we're doing an evaluation. They're looking at that company and they're doing actually an internal evaluation first to really understand from our clients what are they trying to accomplish. Then we're doing an internal risk assessment and trying to really understand whether or not that's a reasonable approach to the service that we want to have or provide. And then we're really looking at their safe harbor certification. We're obviously going to look at whether or not they're willing to indemnify, what their insurance is. We're looking at, you know, their credit worthiness, a number of different factors that go into that due diligence analysis before we really will go into negotiations with that company. So it's a multifaceted process.
Yeah, I think I've also had a number of conversations with different CIOs and our own IT group, and there's 4 or 5 different questions that they're always trying to ask, and some of them are a bit surprising. Where are the customers you're trying to service relative to the data center of the provider? Because sometimes the network costs can be a bit of a surprise, but a lot of it is compliance, regulatory requirements, elasticity of the workload, utilization. Are you higher or lower than a specific point? It's 25%, I think, tends to be the break even for a lot of them. But the SLAs definitely very often come down to compliance. I know of at least one large manufacturing company in the Northeast that they told their cloud provider, you will have these specific hardware and software-based security mechanisms or you will not have our business. And so very quickly that cloud provider scrambled and installed it and got it up and running. But we're seeing more and more examples where there's a preference for specific cloud practices by the buyer. A lot of it comes down to security, not just price.
Well, one thing we have to keep in mind is that it's one thing to be the mega Logitech company, and it's another thing to be the flower shop around the corner. When you have a large client, it has a good negotiating power, and it can talk person to person with the cloud provider, with the service provider, and be able to negotiate some provisions. When you have a small company, that's not possible. So don't dream of negotiating. That will not happen. And so that is also a concern, because when I was talking about this big combination of many different pieces, in the big bag of players, you will have some companies who are too small to have negotiated the good deals, the good representations, the good everything, and so that is also a problem. So you have to differentiate the bargaining power that the big companies have from the total steamroller kill me please approach that the smaller companies have to take, because they have no choice. So if I had a wish, I would say it would be nice if the smaller companies would have also the ability to pick and choose, and that's frankly that's possible. When you talk to the cloud providers, they say, oh, that's what you want? Well, you just should tell me, and it's going to be X, it's going to be more expensive, but you can have it. And I think that's also something that is positive, the fact that the cloud providers are willing to provide different prices for different types of services, whereas in the early days it was a take it or leave it approach. You want that many minutes and it's going to be X amount of dollars, but you didn't have the choice to say I want that many minutes plus an indemnification and plus a warranty and plus you don't change your terms. So really the cloud ecosystem is moving and progressing, and which is very refreshing.
That's very good. So with that, I thought maybe we would ask if the audience had any questions for the panel. I think there's one
we have
over
one
there.
here. He's bringing the
there's
mic.
We have 2 of us, so whoever gets there first, he's gone there first, you're going second. Hi, very, very interesting panel. Thanks all. What are we waiting as a society, as a country, but as a society to have a public debate around privacy and how much we're willing to give? And I mean, why that hasn't happened yet? You know, who's driving that? Who is actually slowing that for that to happen? What's happening? Why?
I think one observation that I read recently, and I must have been along plane flights, is that we have a lot of discussion around privacy, and it's potentially a generational thing. So if you think about what 20-year-olds are willing to put on Facebook versus what most people know better than to put on Facebook, but also anybody of any age will fill out a survey with their personal information and be willing to let it be used if they get something free. And it's just an interesting dynamic. It's an interesting social cue. And I think that might be part of why there just hasn't been as much of a debate as you might expect. And being in technology, I think we're all a little bit more savvy and aware. But I'm not sure that the general public is at the point where they're willing to really have the debate.
I really think it depends upon where you are. I think that in Europe, the debate is fairly robust compared to what's going on in the United States. And I think that their experience is a lot different with the way data has been abused. And the current situation with the NSA may force more debate in the United States about private information. I do agree it's a generational thing, and I also think it's that experiential thing, if you will, that is country specific. Mm-hmm.
But there is also the power of the lobby industry, the power of the advertising industry, and they need the data to be able to do whatever they want to do, and they have a very significant voice. Now I'm not. I don't want to complain about what they do, because in a way that's what helps the internet be what it is. That's what helps sites be free, and that's what has helped the US develop so much and so quickly as an internet provider and as a cloud provider. We wouldn't have clouds if Amazon had not been that big in selling books and so on. But all of this has been paid by our data that have been fueling the internet. So you have this tug of war between the two parts. You want to protect personal information, but if you don't let personal information used by the advertising and marketing industry, then you are going to probably slow down and hamper the development of the web, and that is part of the debate that you see when there are laws being proposed. For example, the security breach laws. We here in California developed a security breach law in 2003, 10 years ago, and we still don't have a federal law that would make things much simpler for everybody. And why? Because there is still a lot of lobbying going on about the extent of the law. But the laws are there. Everybody talks about them. They are analyzed periodically in Congress. We just need something to graduate and make it into a law. So there is a debate.
I know I'm here as the moderator, but I was just speaking on a panel in Minnesota, the Cybersecurity Summit, and I'm also on the task force at DHS for enterprise risk and cybersecurity and insurance. And basically, we are having a lot of discussion around roles, rights, and responsibilities, and what that means to the corporation, what it means as part of the public-private partnership. And how do we go down the privacy and security, role together? And I think no one has the silver bullet yet, and we're seeing that every day. But I think creating risk intelligence around organizations and awareness even at the individual level it's just like making any other decisions. If there's a fire, you call the firemen, right? And and we're all doing fire drills, and we're educated, and we use that in the risk business because it's the most concrete bricks and mortar thing you can think about when it comes to cybersecurity and risk. But privacy is about that security risk. So there are a lot of dialogues. I encourage you to go on the DHS website. There's a lot about building that risk intelligence in your life and in your corporation. So,
question in the back there.
Hi. First, I wanted to say it's nice to see another attorney here.
We have two.
Two? Oh, two. Oh, three. Okay, great. Hi.
We've surrounded the panel with
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I'm an attorney from New York, so hi. Nice to see you. I was hoping you guys could elaborate a little bit more on what's going on in Europe, because they're getting very restrictive, and I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit more about, a best practice approach maybe to dealing with that. There's a lot of conversation about model clauses. You mentioned safe harbor, but they seem to want to get more restrictive. There was an article recently in the Times about that, so I was just hoping you could talk about it. Thank you.
More penalties. I think we're going to need more than 5 minutes to do that, but we can try.
I mean, there have been a lot. Europe does take the lead, if you will, on privacy and restrictions. And there has been a number of moves. There is obviously the regulation that is coming out. And Francoise, when is that supposed to?
Probably 2015, 2016.
Yeah, 2015. Exactly. And there was the attempts at the cookie legislation, which we've seen, and that's been perhaps foolhardy, I would say. But it's just really hard to answer that question right now. But Europe is taking more action. And you see that in some of the actions they've taken against various companies. The United States also has too. We've seen actions against Google and Facebook, et cetera. But Francois, do you have something to add? It's just hard to answer it in a nutshell.
Well, it starts with the fact that you have two regions that have a different way of thinking, and so that does not help. And so when you have two regions who are talking a different language and you want to make them talk with each other, it goes like this. And so that's the basics. As far as the strengthening of the rules, we were much better off a year ago. There was progress, there was talk, and there was an acknowledgement that the US were doing something. We are very active at protecting privacy, personal data, and so on. And it shows. And the FTC was able to participate in meetings with the other data protection commissioners from Europe and the rest of the world on an equal basis. And the FTC and the data protection commissioners really talk with each other. There is a lot of cooperation. Now, you have to address the reality, and when you have an event like the Snowden situation, which really has nothing to do with the laws that are being discussed because it's a national security issue and it's not part of the privacy laws, that gets everybody excited. And so the reaction, the gut reaction, remember, these people, Mrs. Redding and the others, they are elected by people in their constituency, so they need to please their constituents. So it's a lot of politics. Whereas in reality, if you look at the relationship, they should be better. So anyway, so we have this reaction because of the NSA situation in Europe, saying, "Oh, we have to be stronger, we have to have more laws, and so on." But what we have, you were talking about bottom clauses, we are talking about safe harbor. These have been in here for a decade, for 10 years. I mean, the safe harbor was 2000, so that's 13 years. What the reaction of Europe right now is to take away some of the safe harbor, for example, of the nice situations that we had created to make it work. But there is a problem, and the problem is that you have good companies who do a good job. Logitech is one of them, and you guys as well. And then you have the companies who cheat, who file safe harbor certification that are a bunch of lies, and that is bad for our reputation. And I mean, periodically Europe runs a survey of the safe harbor filings and then comes to us and say, "Hey guys, you're kidding. Look at this and this and this company. They are filing self-certifications that are lies. And so that hurts. If some of these American companies didn't do that, we would be much better off. So there is a lot to do.
So I'm not sure if I can get the question in quickly enough, but basically I'd like to take issue with the myth that IT is just going to become a broker, because that presupposes the myth that all IT will move to the cloud. And if all IT did move to the cloud, unlike every single other industry on the planet and against the rational economics of a hybrid architecture, then that would make sense. But if there are hybrids, I guess I'm curious what your theory is, if anyone, that IT somehow just becomes a broker as opposed to becomes a broker on top of the 1,000 things that it already has to manage.
So that's a very good point. So I just want to define cloud. When people define cloud, you quickly go to public cloud. The definition of cloud is private cloud, that's on-prem. It's public cloud and a combination of public and private called hybrid. The pressure of consumerization of services because of the outside public cloud services that are coming from the Salesforce.coms or from WebEx, from Cisco, etc. What has happened is IT needs to provide even their private cloud services as a standardized service rather than just proprietary. That is a model where they did development the old-fashioned way. So to become a broker is not just become a broker for outside public cloud services, but to become a broker of providing even services internally that are standardized services, which is a completely new way of delivering services to the business. So the word broker, in my mind, actually doesn't have a negative connotation. It actually has a good connotation in terms of you're really becoming the orchestrator of services, whether they're internal or external, but they are standardized, which is a whole change that is occurring thanks to Facebook and Google's, who've got DevOps, which have a rapid way of delivering services versus the traditional IT that took 6 months to develop a new module in ERP, as an example.
Yeah, I would say at Intel we have a very similar definition. Not because we did the study together, but we had a similar definition to start, which is there's public, there's private, there's hybrid, there's even private on off-prem, and there's a lot of different combinations. Broker really means that they have the ability and the control to decide what is the best fit for this given situation, the workload, the data, and the governance. And they can keep it on an internal private cloud. They can burst out periodically to an external public cloud if they have the high demand and peak compute rates that they don't want to build up internally and have a huge capital outlay. And then they can run private cloud as well. So it's really more about control and choice over all of these different environments.
Joe, these dynamic women want to be your trusted advisor. Okay? Yes, so we're going to wrap it up now, I think. We have one more question? No? Okay.
No time.
Yeah, we can stay behind if anybody wants. We can answer some more questions.
Yeah, it's just as a courtesy to the 8 speakers who are waiting in 8 rooms.
Yes, yes. So.
Yeah. So questions offline.
Yes, questions offline.
Shall we thank the panel?
Yes. Thank you.